What's up, Taiwan? I'm Tiffany Wong with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan's government is reportedly working out how it would keep its people fed in the case of a Chinese blockade. Jaime Okan is live for us with the latest. Jaime, what are we hearing?
Well, Taiwan's legislature released some pretty rare details of how it's preparing in the case of an emergency like a blockade or a war. This report shows that Taiwan has been taking monthly inventories of things like food, making sure they're properly stored and spread out across Taiwan in the case that maybe China's military encircles a country, as Beijing has threatened to invade Taiwan to bring it under its control. Now, this report, taking rice, for example, under law, Taiwan needs to have at least 3 months worth of rice stockpiled in the case of a blockade. But this report shows that the Agriculture Ministry actually has 7 months worth of rice stockpiled. And it's investing actually to make sure that as these supply stations spread across Taiwan to make sure they can distribute that food efficiently in the case of that crisis. The report also shows that Taiwan has been investing in the infrastructure to support fishing in ponds and rivers inside Taiwan. And the reason why that's important is because, well, Taiwan is an island and surrounded by the ocean, so that if China was to blockade Taiwan, Chinese Coast Guard ships and Navy ships would be kind of swarming the country around and making sure they can enforce that blockade. Some U.S. think tanks have done some analysis, some studies that Taiwan would be able to hold out in the event of a blockade for about 6 months before asking other countries like the U.S. potentially for assistance.
Jaime, is there any reason why Taiwan is talking about this now?
Well, first things first, there's no sign of any imminent blockade or any imminent attack. The reason why people are talking about this is because earlier this month, China conducted large-scale military exercises that pretty much simulated a blockade on Taiwan. Those came after Taiwan President Lai Ching-te's National Day speech on October 10th. This morning, Taiwan's Defense Minister Wellington Koo said that a blockade would be an act of war. And the Defense Ministry is actually concerned that one of these large-scale exercises could turn into a blockade before Taiwan and potentially even the United States has time to react. So all this talk about rationing food is just a way for Taiwan to kind of understand how to best prepare for a blockade, both from a military and also from a civilian standpoint.
Thank you, Jaime. That was Jaime Okan live from Taipei. Taiwanese chip giant TSMC says it's not being investigated by the U.S. government for violating U.S. export controls. That's after reports that their advanced chips had been found in products from Chinese company Huawei. Chris Gorin has been following the story from Taipei. Chris, does this change our understanding of potential violations by TSMC?
Well, as you said, Tiffany, it's been reported that TSMC chips were found in AI products made by China's Huawei. Now, TSMC has released a statement about the case, which states in part that TSMC is complying with export controls and that it has not supplied to Huawei since September 2020. It also says that they proactively communicated with U.S. authorities regarding the case and are not aware of TSMC being the subject of any investigation at this time. Now, meanwhile, a U.S. Department of Commerce spokesperson has said that they know about the media reports but cannot comment on any investigations. Now, even unintentional violations of U.S. export controls can be penalized, but voluntary self-disclosures, like the one TSMC claims to have made, can reduce those penalties. Now, although it's not officially confirmed, the TSMC chip in question was reportedly found inside Huawei's Ascend 910B processor, which is considered to be the most advanced AI chip made by a Chinese company. It's used to train large language models like ChatGPT. And it's important to point out this is the exact kind of product that U.S. export controls are targeting. The U.S. wants to slow down AI development in China because the technology could be used to help the Chinese military, and also it keeps the U.S. edge in AI tech.
How does TSMC figure into the U.S.-China tech rivalry?
Well, Tiffany, TSMC is essentially the bottleneck of AI technology. They make 90% of the world's most advanced chips, and U.S. export controls apply to any company in the world that uses U.S. technology to make their products, and that includes TSMC. Now, even if these allegations turn out to be true, it wouldn't be the first time that Chinese companies have been able to skirt U.S. export controls. It's been reported that Chinese companies can easily buy some of the most advanced chips made by U.S. NVIDIA through third-party brokers in countries like Malaysia. So I think the case really demonstrates the difficulty of enforcing these worldwide export controls and also the tough, challenging situation that chip makers like TSMC are being put in.
Thanks for that, Chris. That was Chris Gorin live from Taipei. A contractor has died working on a power system at a future TSMC site. Officials are looking into how he was electrocuted.
他们有一些相关的没有符合规定的部分，我们会依自然法的规定来做处分，然后针对现场的部分，电力配电作业部分我们立即跟他处停工。
The accident occurred at TSMC's planned advanced 2-nanometer chip plant in Hsinchu. There have been a series of accidents at the site, raising concerns over workplace safety. TSMC has pledged full cooperation with the investigation. Experts don't believe it will delay TSMC's plan to start mass production of those chips in 2025. Taiwan is digging in its heels in the face of the South African government's demands to move its representative office out of its administrative capital, Pretoria. But some of Taiwan's unofficial allies are advocating for its place on the world stage. Fighting an eviction notice, Taiwan's foreign ministry is insisting on its right to keep its representative office in South Africa's administrative capital, Pretoria. In October, the South African government requested that the office move to Johannesburg, its largest city. Diplomats and foreign policy experts say China is likely behind the decision. It's an all-too-familiar move. Although most countries have cut formal ties with Taiwan, Beijing is still irritated by Taipei's efforts to maintain informal ties. But in this case, Taiwan's foreign ministry is standing firm against the request.
我方10月7号接获南非限期签管文件后，外交部长林佳龙即指派亚太师长召见南非驻台代表，表达政府抗议、不满及不接受的立场。
Taiwan's foreign ministry is getting support from some of the country's closest unofficial allies, including the U.S. and Japan. Republican U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn called for the U.S. government to impose trade barriers on South Africa for working with the Chinese Communist Party to bully Taiwan. The Taiwan-Japan Exchange Association also received advice from Japan and the U.S., but did not provide specifics. And South African political parties like the IFP are also protesting their government's decision.
The IFP is concerned by the impact such action will have on the bilateral framework South Africa has enjoyed with Taiwan for the past 26 years.
South Africa switched diplomatic ties from Taiwan to China in 1997, but signed an agreement allowing Taipei to keep an office in Pretoria. It's typical practice for Taiwan to keep offices in the capitals of countries that it does not have official diplomatic relations with.
非邦交国的这个外交空间来讲，其实是非常的大。我们应该可以利用我们的这个经贸的这个实力，去跟各国去做谈判。
The foreign ministry has said they haven't ruled out forcing South Africa to move its own representative office out of Taipei. But with only a week left to negotiate before Pretoria says it'll shut Taiwan's de facto embassy down, Taipei might be left with no other choice than to move out. Patrick Chen and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus. One person has been killed by a bacterial infection linked to standing water left by Typhoon Katon. The man was in his 80s, and he was one of 2 people in Kaohsiung reported with Melioidosis after floodwaters inundated the southern city. Taiwan CDC suspects he was infected by airborne droplets. Taiwan has seen 98 cases and 18 deaths from melioidosis this year, the highest in 23 years. Israel has confirmed that it killed Hezbollah's heir apparent. Hashem Safiaddin was expected to take the helm of the Iran-backed Lebanese militant group after Israel killed its previous leader, Hassan Nasrallah, in an airstrike. Safiaddin held a prominent role addressing funerals and speaking on behalf of Hezbollah at official events. Israel's military says they killed Safiaddin 3 weeks ago in a strike in a southern suburb of the Lebanese capital, Beirut. Female students and activists have taken to the streets of Bangladesh, protesting a significant rise in violence against women there. As Rosie Greninger reports, they're calling on the government for equal rights for men and women.
Holding burning torches, crowds of students march in the Bangladeshi capital Dhaka, calling on the government to act against a dramatic surge in violence against women. According to the United Nations, at least half of all women in the country face physical or sexual violence from men during their lifetimes. Protesters say they had hoped a student-led nationwide revolution that ousted the South Asian country's autocratic leader, Sheikh Hasina, in August would have improved the situation.
ওই আন্দোলনের সময় আমরা যেভাবে রাস্তায় বেরিয়ে আসতে হল থেকে রাতের বেলা বেরিয়ে আসতে নিরাপদ বোধ করেছিলাম সেভাবে যাতে এই আন্দোলন পরবর্তী বাংলাদেশে এমন বাংলাদেশ হবে যেখানে নারীরা নিরাপদ বোধ করবে নারীদের উপর যে ধরনের নিপীড়ন এবং যে ধরনের ধর্ষণের যে ধরনের ঘটনাগুলো ঘটে এগুলোর মাত্রা কমে আসবে কিন্তু এই গণঅভ্যুত্থান পরবর্তী বাংলাদেশে আমরা দেখতে পাচ্ছি যে নারীদের প্রতি যে হয়রানি এবং নারী নিপীড়নের যেসব ঘটনা এবং ধর্ষণের ঘটনা আগের চেয়ে ক্রমান্বয়ে বেড়েই যাচ্ছে
After Hasina fled the country, Nobel Peace Prize winner Muhammad Yunus was appointed to lead a temporary administration with the goal of restoring democratic institutions. But in the months since Yunus took the top job, there's been a significant rise in violence against women, with cases increasing by 25% in September compared to previous months, according to women's rights organisation Bangladesh Mahila Parishad. Protesters haven't laid out how they want the government to tackle the issue, but are demanding equal rights for men and women.
নিশ্চিত করতে চাই সকল বৈষম্যই দূর করতে চাই সেক্ষেত্রে নারী পুরুষের ক্ষেত্রেও সমাজ নারী পুরুষকে দেখবার যে বৈষম্য রেখেছে এখনো মননে সেটারও আমরা পরিবর্তন ঘটাতে চাই
Transgender women are also joining the action. Homosexuality is criminalised in Bangladesh, sidelining members of the LGBTQ+ community from education, employment and other human rights. And right-wing political parties that have spearheaded anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ+ movements have moved to align themselves with the newly formed interim government, prompting fears of increased hate and violence towards the group.
নারী লিঙ্গ রূপান্তর নারী হিসেবে আমার প্রতি যে সহিংসতা হচ্ছে সেই সহিংসতাগুলি কিভাবে বন্ধ করা যায় সেটার জন্য যে নারী হিসেবে সমাজে প্রতিষ্ঠিত হতে হলে সমাজ তো আমাকে স্বীকৃতি দেয় না রাষ্ট্রের নীতিগত জায়গাগুলি থেকে আমার বিষয়গুলি উল্লেখ নেই আমি একজন লিঙ্গ রূপান্তর নারী হিসেবে আমার পড়াশোনা আমি বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ে অ্যাডমিশন নিতে পারি না তাহলে আমি যদি বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ে পড়তে না পারি আমার মতো করে তাহলে কি আমি দক্ষ মানব সম্পদে রূপান্তরিত হব
A call for concrete change as the interim government works on restoring order in Bangladesh. The caretaker administration says that goal will take some time, but as they grapple with re-establishing the country, demonstrators here are pushing for equal rights and protections for all citizens to be a top priority. Dolphine Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
North Korean leader Kim Jongun says the U.S.'s nuclear capabilities are a, quote, ever-increasing threat to his country's security. According to reports from North Korean state media, Kim made the comments while inspecting strategic missile bases. Kim also called for the modernization of the North's military by prioritizing missile forces to deter the United States. Swimmer Wen-erh has swum around Manhattan Island, making history as the first Taiwanese to complete 3 major global open water challenges. It took Xu 9 hours to circle the island in New York City, accompanied by a boat flying Taiwan's flag. She had already crossed the English Channel and the Catalina Channel off the Californian coast.
我觉得好开心，可以看到这一面国旗，就是在整个这个环曼哈顿的这个路径上面飘扬。那我很开心是可以在不同的舞台上，甚至不同的国家上，让更多的人可以看见我们台湾也有人在从事这样的运动。
Only about 330 people in the world have finished the open water swimming Triple Crown Challenge. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally today, we take you to London, where the Kew Gardens are getting decked out with pumpkins for Halloween. I'm Tiffany Wong. Take care and see you next time.